Hi everyone, welcome back to my shop. I'm Mick. This is part 2 of the new DRO installation on my old clausing lathe. So as usual with me, after much deliberation and changing my mind several times, I have decided that the way I'm going to mount these scales, or this scale, to the mounting bracket is simply by drilling some holes in the end and using some cap screws with a spacer behind it to secure it to the track, or to the bracket. The issue that I ran into, I had planned out this nice aluminum bracket and everything, but the issue that I ran into is space. Where this needs to mount, there's about 1/8 of an inch of clearance at the bottom of the scale. So it and there was no room to come out away from the scale. It's going to be a vertical orientation, but away from the scale near the bottom of the scale either. So holes it is, and I've already drilled one hole in this, and apparently my scales here are not anywhere near like the scales that or the scale that Blondie Hacks put in her mill quill, or it looks like even the one in mine. The one in mine, it looks like it's a stainless steel as well, but these are simply aluminum and very easy to drill, which is nice and very easy to cut. Okay, I gotta move the table other direction. Like butter. Alright, so I'm working on the mounting bracket that attaches to the reed head. I'm going to slot this one so it's adjustable up and down, and I believe this is the only adjustment that's going to be needed on the bracketry that holds the reed head to the carriage. You can see I've already got the end points drilled out, so I'm just going to slot these and fit it, and then move on to the rest. Alright, the scale is attached to the cross slide. The reed head is on the scale. It's not mounted yet, but this gives me an idea of how much clearance I need between the scale and the mounting bracket. For now, I'm just going to use a stack of washers as spacers. And eventually I'll make a, before I'm finished with the job, not eventually, before I'm finished with this job, I will make some spacers to fit in here that are the right size, so I'm not just using a stack of washers. But for now I want to use a stack of washers so I can finish getting the reed head attached to the to the carriage, and then I can get the DRO attached to the scales and get it calibrated and set up, and then the lathe will actually be usable again. I do still, however, need to make the corresponding bracket for here and the cover piece that'll go across here and then down to cover up the scale. I do not want all chips and gunk and everything getting in here, so that'll be done before I use the lathe again as well, and that'll be painted the same color as the lathe. Obviously this paint's old and been exposed to a lot of grease and oil and stuff, but I think you might be able to see here this is a lot closer to what the color is actually supposed to be. It's a blue, not a green that this looks like. So I'm going to get the washers in here and get this set up, and then finish making the brackets to attach the reed head and make sure I can get the DRO calibrated and everything, and then finish up the rest. Alright, we're on the final steps of the mounting bracket for the reed head for the X-axis. Pardon. That's the automatic drain for the air compressor. So I'm going to mill a couple slots in this because I still have the washers in as the spacers. Just in case it's a little off, I don't want any binding or anything like that, so I'm giving myself plenty of adjustability, way more than I need. But what the heck, you're milling a slot, you might as well mill a longer slot if you got material. Last couple cuts I did in aluminum, I didn't use any cutting fluid or anything like that, and of course welded aluminum to my mill, my end mill, so we're using some aluminum cutting fluid this time. Alright, let's take the this over, get it deburred, and then we'll be ready to mount it to the lathe. Alright, there's only 2 pieces of angle bracket needed to mount the reed head. They need to be attached together first because I can't get to the screws when it's attached to the reed head. So let's get these on. There we go. Now the reed head gets attached.
From family room. Dinner is ready.
Sounds like it's dinner time. It's too thick. This scale seemed to work pretty well as a spacer. To make sure everything stays nice and parallel. Alright, now the reed head goes back on the scale. Use my stack of washers. Now I need to get on the other side of the carriage, mark, drill, and tap the holes for that. And this thing is attached. And then we can see about testing it and calibrating it. Okay, so now I'm making the spacers to replace the washers that space out the scale from the mounting bracket, so there's room for the reed head to meet. All these compressors, sorry, that was the water drain on the compressor again. So anyway, I'm going to make two spacers out of aluminum, and I'm just going to start by cleaning up this top surface with the tri-fly from Shrum, and then I'm going to use Joe Pye's method so I don't have to keep flipping this block around, and just run around all four sides with an end mill. And then that'll give me a fully cleaned up area. I can actually go ahead and drill the holes if I want, and maybe at that point just slice them off with a slitting saw, flip them over, and finish off the other side. So that's a tentative plan. Let's see how it goes. Alright, that cleaned up pretty nicely, even without swapping back to the aluminum inserts made for aluminum. Okay, I've got the parts laid out. They're going to be, what is it here? Measurements. Half an inch by 0.785 and 0.39 thick. And then with a hole drilled directly in the center. So I haven't done this before, so I'm going to try just using the end mill, milling out around these two, one on either end here, excuse me, spacers, and cutting them to depth, and or a little over, drilling the holes, and then I'm probably just going to take it over to the bandsaw with my fixture plate, chop it off, bring it back, and face off the other end to the right thickness. So again, that's the plan. Let's see how the plan goes. I do have, excuse me, frog in my throat. I do have a carbide end mill in there, so it's going to be running pretty fast. Very exciting, get to use my new Jacob's chuck, which you can't see. There it is in all of its glory. It's a small chuck. It's got a range from 0 to 1/4 inch. But I was having problems with small drill bits in my my other drill chuck. So I think this will be perfect for that. It's a ball bearing chuck, and yes, very, very impressive. Alright, so let's get some cutting fluid on there. I don't want to mess with the lube cube right now. And I want to set I didn't center drill the pilot drill this at all. It's aluminum, it's a relatively good sized bit, and it's just a spacer. There's no precision really necessary here. Okay, as usual, changing plan again, back to the original approach. I couldn't use the slitting saw on the mill without moving, adjusting the piece, the work piece anyway, because there wasn't enough clearance. Despite how much I would like to build another tool to make that clearance problem more minimal, I want to get this job done. So I've just lined it up in the bandsaw with the fixture plate, and I'll cut it off and then do the same steps I was going to do anyway, flip them over in the mill, and trim down this saw cut side until I've got the right thickness. Okay, deburr these pieces and then the final operation. Mill them down to size. Alright, so I'm starting on the cover for the cross slide. I'm making it out of this sheet metal. I don't know what gauge it is. I'll check it and let you know. It's actually pretty stout but not terribly thick. But I'm going to be cutting it using this circular saw. This is an Evolution saw which has a carbide tip blade, and it's made specifically for cutting metal. According to the specs, it'll cut up to half-inch thick steel. I haven't tried it. Like I said, I haven't used it at all. So let's give it a shot and see how it goes. I've got a fence set up here where I want my cut. Accounting for the offset of the base, and got my safety glasses on. Got the blade adjusted, and I've got it sitting on a piece of scrap plywood so I don't cut my table. Check this. I measured. There is a problem. Alright, I gotta redo this. I forgot to take into account the thickness of the blade, and I do not want this cut short. So I'll be back after I get it adjusted. Alright, I'm back. I've adjusted the fence for the blade thickness. Now let's rip through this thing and see how it goes. Woo! Just like the chop saw. Big hot chips everywhere. But I'd say that was a success. Nice little deburring, and 16 gauge, that's what it is. Alright. Go deburr this and then lay out the other marks. Now I've got to cut a semicircle out of the one end where it meets up against where the tool post mounts. Semi-sketchy fixturing here. I've got my aluminum fixture plate clamped in the jaws. I've got a piece of plywood on top of that. Then I've got the work piece, and I've got it clamped here. This piece, maybe I should have clamped it a little further down here, but this is all the cutting force is going down. As long as it doesn't move, I think I'll be okay. So, alright, the lube cube is operational. Let's see here. I think I'm going to switch to one low on the gearing. Sorry, bumping the camera there. There we go. Let's see what that looks like. Alright, let's try that. shifting. Alright, I gotta add some more clamps. Alright, I'm back. I put 3 more clamps on this puppy. Should be okay now, I think. Alright, let's go see how it fits. It's going to take me a half an hour to get these clamps off. Just joking, but I'll be back. Alright, it's getting there. Need to fine tune it a little bit. I think I'll use a drum sander just to clean up this inside edge and open it up just a little bit. This is not quite flush on this edge. And then once that's done, I will drill and countersink for the holes to secure it to these bars. And then I will bend here over to cover the scale. Yeah, it's coming along. I think we're getting there. So off camera, I drilled and countersunk all the holes to attach this cover, and using the metal circular saw, cut a groove in the metal, and that's where it's going to bend. This is pretty heavy material, so hopefully that'll help it bend. I'm going to get this cleaned up and get the brake out and see about bending this. Alright, I've got the workpiece set up in the brake. Everything is ready to go. Now we just need to bend it and hope for the best. Try moving it a little forward. Seems to be pulling up on the clamps. All right, let's try that. Wow. I've never done this before. It seems like that's an awful lot of pressure. And it's bowing up in the center here. I'll get another piece of steel to clamp down on there and help make that a little bit more rigid. Alright, I'll be back. Alright, let's try again. I think even with that groove I cut in there, it's still pretty thick for this little break. Alright, she's going. yeah, I think that looks pretty good. Alright, let's take it out and see how she looks. I definitely need to make some of the modifications you've seen people make to this brake. I'd like to get it set up so that I can just pull it out on the table and use it, but this isn't too bad. No, mine not quite 90 there. Alright, I'm just going to finish this up a little bit by hand, and then we'll take it over to the lathe and test it out. Alright, it is all assembled, and I actually couldn't be happier. The clearance, I mean, there's virtually no gap there. It's as low as it's as close to the carriage as it can get, and there's enough room to cover the reed head back here. There's just a small gap. It fits really well. It's nice and sturdy. It has plenty of clearance between here and here. When I say plenty, you know, probably 1/16 to an eighth, between a 1/16 and an eighth of an inch, something like that, which is plenty. So sorry about that. My noisy air compressor decided it needed to turn on. So anyway, I was saying, I'm going to take the cover off, and this bar, because this edge, let me show you over here. See if you can see. See, that edge of this bar is exposed. So I'm going to take this plate and this bar off. I'm going to mask all of the edges of this bar except for this one, and then sandblast them and paint them the same color as the lathe. So yeah, I'm not going to be able to film the sandblasting. You can't see in the cabinet very well, and it's extremely noisy, and the compressor runs all the time. Alright, the new DRO is finished. I didn't film any of this final assembly of it or anything, or the painting or anything, so I think you guys know how that kind of stuff works. But anyway, the cover turned out very well, I think. Where it comes down over the side here, the clearance on it, I got lucky. It is almost perfect. I mean, it couldn't be any closer, so that cover couldn't be any bigger. Everything is nice and smooth. Obviously, that's, you know, more to do with the cross slide and all that, but everything works as expected. I've got a nice big flat surface here now that I can put a mag base on or something. I've got the DRO, the display, mounted up here. Originally, the old DRO and the motor control, the speed control, was mounted here on top of the lathe, and every time I would open this this cover to either lock the back gear or anything, it would all be flopping all over the place and everything. So now I've got plenty of room to get in here, and the DRO and the motor controller are up out of the way. I also added, I have not mounted it yet, but I will be doing that here shortly. I added an emergency shutoff. So turn it on, off, or emergency. I thought that might be a good idea given that the motor control is a little bit further back now, and although it's not over the chuck, if I'm over here working, I do have to reach over the chuck to get to it. This way, if there's something goes wrong here, I don't have to put my hands, my body in the way. I can just reach over here and hit the emergency stop button. So that'll be the next little project. That's not a big deal. And I'm gonna do the backsplash and the way covers later. That'll be another video. This has been going on entirely too long. But yeah, I also, while I was at it, I repainted, sandblasted and repainted the threading dial. It was the original color. This hammer finish blue color from Rust-Oleum I think actually looks really nice. It's kind of interesting though how the color difference between the new stuff and the older stuff that's been exposed to coolant and oil and all that kind of stuff. I actually thought this was green paint, but if you look down in the valleys here between the ways, it is more blue, and down at the base of the lathe down here, this is definitely more blue. But yeah, I was lucky I was able to get some of the blue paint because they don't make it anymore. So I have 2 cans, and if you can find it, that stuff's going for like 50-60 bucks a can. Anyway, new DRO is finished, and I couldn't be more pleased. So yeah, as you can see, and this tablet is mounted to this shelf. Yeah, anyway, thanks for watching. Take care.